Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Renesmee. Time to witness what if Edward betrayed Jacob. Fall into the video. Jacob Pov. Well, I waited to meet Sam, I though about when I first became a werewolf. I had dropped Bella and her friend off at her house and rushed home. I'd been dreaming of wolves the last few nights. My skin itched and everything hurt. I was 20 minutes away from the res. When I felt my muscles start to twitch and the pain making me cry out. I don't remember getting the rabbit to the side of the road before I was outside of the car on my hands and knees. I watched in horror as my fingers started to shorten and extra hair started sprouting from my hands and arms. I felt my shoulders dislocate and my nose and jaw extend. I was panting and sweating. The pain was unbearable and I was terrified. My back arched and I felt my hips shift as my knees buckled and I fell to my side. I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew my body was sore and the sun was up. I tried to flex my fingers but couldn't and whimpered. That's when I noticed the long muzzle and nose attached to my face. I looked down at my arms and I saw paws and fur. Startled and scared, I jumped up onto all fours and howled. I was disoriented and just started running. I could hear voices in my head but I couldn't register them in my fear. I ran until I was exhausted and collapsed. A week later Sam and Paul found me wandering. I still was terrified and still couldn't understand what the voices were in my head. Sam nudged me to my feet and pushed me to follow Paul. We ran back to the res. But I stopped at the border. I couldn't go see my dad like this. I was a monster. Terrified, I turned and tried to run again, but Sam pinned me to the ground. I didn't know at the time who these two wolves were, but somehow he calmed me. As Paul shook out his coat, Sam stood over me and nuzzled my neck. Eventually I calmed and I could hear the voices. I do not understand how he's not hearing us, Paul. I'm not sure either. I think it's his fear. I can smell nothing but it off him, Sam. Sam, we need to get him to Billy. Paul. Sam turned his head to Paul then, and I whimpered. Sam? His head shot back to mine, and I heard Jacob. I whimpered again, this time to the agonized, confused sounds. SHHHH, Paul and Sam whispered in my head. Sam was nuzzling my neck again. They eventually got me calmed and talked me through the transformation. I passed out again from the pain because the next thing I knew, I was in my bed. The crack of a stick snapped me out of my past and I watched Sam's figure step out from behind a tree. Jake, he whispered and walked up to me. You wanted to see me? I said. I felt like I was in shit but I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. He walked up to me, now standing face to face. Sam reached up and swiped his knuckles over my cheek. I stepped back and looked at him confused. SHHHH, Jakey. It's okay. I promise not to hurt you. He leaned forward and his lips barely touched mine before I shoved him back. I whimpered and took multiple steps back, but in my confusion and weirded outness, I tripped and landed in the dirt. Sam stepped up to me and loomed over me. That's when I noticed he was hard. I whimpered and tried to get away from him. Sam grabbed my arms and pinned them above my head. Jake. He bellowed. I filched at his tone. Stop, I'm going to take you, but I'll be gentle. His grip tightened around my wrists. I remember seeing something in Seth's mind about Sam and him. I shivered but stopped moving. He seemed to enjoy my subservice and leaned down to kiss me. I whimpered in fear but kissed him back. I saw what happened to Seth when he refused Sam. His hand slid down my arm slowly, then over my shoulders, down my chest, and then he pulled my shirt up over my head. I still didn't move, arms still above my head, and I fought hard not to cry. Sam's movements and caresses became more and more animalistic as he caressed my chest. He had locked his eyes with mine, and I watched slowly as all of his humanity slipped from them and his beast became prominent. His eyes had changed to the bright yellow of his wolf and reflected the moonlight. He was no longer Sam, but the alpha wolf taking his mate. I whimpered and tried to move, but Sam grabbed my neck hard and snarled, "On you hands and knees." His hand tightened, and I forced myself not to cry out. He jerked me up by my belt and flipped me over before I knew what was happening. He pulled my belt from its loops and yanked my pants down. He stroked my shoulders roughly, and I whimpered. My sound seemed to just spur him on, and he growled. His growl sent shivers of fear down my spine. It was inhuman, and I'd never heard something like this from my leader's lips before. He wrapped an arm around my hips and using his other forearm, pushed my shoulders down to the ground. Keeping his arm on my shoulders, he yanked down his pants and I felt the tip of him. Whimpering and almost screaming, I started to fight to get away. He gripped my shoulders hard enough to make my arms go numb and slammed into me. I let out a shrieking painful scream and realized it hurt more when I fought. His thrusts were hard and I felt a stab of pain with each one. He gripped the top of my arms and pulled me to his chest. I didn't expect this, but what he did next shocked me. He trailed his lips across my shoulders and was thrusting gently now. He kissed up the side of my neck and licked a spot that made everything in me tingle. running his hands across my stomach, then walked his fingers up to my nipples. He ran his thumbs over my nipples and I whimpered, this time in pleasure. He worked for a little while at turning me on and then gripped my cock. I was horrified that I was even turned on. He started pumping me roughly and matched his thrusts to his fast-moving hand. I was a little taken aback from the pain and pleasure almost shooting me right to my release. Sam kissed up from my shoulder to my pulse point. He thrust the hardest he had yet and sank his canines into my neck. I screamed out and released while Sam has his release. His teeth extracted from my neck and Sam let me go. He doubled over gasping while my head spun. The blood bond. Fuck. I changed quickly, all of my pain making me black out. When my muzzle hit the dirt I woke and took off at a run. I could hear Sam running behind me, yelling. He didn't have enough time to change. I just kept running, fear and disgust and horror driving me. I was pregnant. Jacob Pov. I don't know how long I ran, what direction, or anything. All my brain screamed was run. I must have collapsed then fell asleep while I was running. I noticed that I was back in human form, but everything hurt. I stayed curled into a ball on the ground for a while, wishing I had someone to talk to. Bella was gone. I couldn't save her after she jumped. I remember Cullen trying to tear my head off after her memorial, and I didn't move. It was my fault she was gone. I cried silently about everything for a while. My body ached to move, and my stomach was growling so loud I'm sure the res could hear it. I just ignored it. I didn't want this. The smell of deer floated towards me and my body and instincts took over. My head was muddled as I transformed. The pain was overwhelming, but I didn't make a sound. My nose scented out the herd of deer and my legs coiled my body into a run. I managed to take down the large buck of the group and devoured the carcass while the others of his herd scattered. I devoured the carcass and then trotted off to find a cave to sleep in. Now that I was fed, my senses picked back up to their normal level and I could smell the ocean. I ignored the humming in my head and let my instincts guide me. I knew it was Sam and some of the others from the res pack trying to get me to come home. I yelled at them to leave me alone, then shut off the voices. I didn't think, just curled up in a cave and fell asleep. I woke at sundown the next day and stood and stretched my muscles. I was human again and shivering a little. Standing, I stepped from the cave and sniffed out a water source. I found a small river and washed the blood from my shoulder and any other place that I was scratched. Now I was really shivering, the night was getting colder. I fell to all fours and transformed again. I was still sore, but it hurt less. I took off again, not thinking, running from the voices. I happened upon a small shore town in Mexico. I found some clothes and, stealing them from the line they were clipped to, I dashed into a dark corner of the alley and slipped them on. I needed to get as far away from them as I could. So I stowed away on a boat, not caring where it took me, and hid in the cargo bay. I laid in the corner and thought about what I knew about the blood bonds. Me being the rightful alpha made things a little more complicated. Sam and I were now attached somehow. I'm not entirely sure what the attachment is, but our futures are intertwined unless I can manage to hide from them. I knew I needed to stay human when I was in a city or near a place that could identify where I am. I knew that my pregnancy was only going to be about 6 to 7 months. I knew the chance of me surviving the birth was little and that I needed to go home for the pups to survive. But I was scared, betrayed by my pack. I had my brain and heart battling against my instincts to be near my alpha. I had to make sure my head kept hold over that instinct. I was confused and destroyed emotionally. I didn't know what to do. Somehow my pups came into this and I really didn't want them. But I knew I couldn't kill them either. I didn't want Sam anywhere near us. This was wrong. I was a pregnant male werewolf alone and wondering. I had no money, no one. Nothing. I couldn't go back. I just thought and slept for the trip. I noticed it took a few days to arrive and I was weak by the time I was able to slip off the ship. I stumbled out onto a dock. I stumbled around the best I could and noticed the more I looked around the weaker I became. I didn't realize how vulnerable being pregnant left me. I found a half-decent looking alley with a crate and curled up on it. My stomach was protesting having no food, so I struggled up to look in the garbage. I knew I wasn't close enough to a forest to do anything else. I dug around for a while when a door opened next to the bin and a man looked at me and yelled "OI." G out of 3 I spun at the man's voice but lost my balance and fell to the ground. I wrapped my arms around my stomach to protect my pups and groaned when I hit the pavement. I found myself really not caring about anything anymore and just laid there. The man ran to me and noticed how pale I was. "OI." A few of his buddies joined him in the alley and they carried me over to the crate. "What happened to you?" the man asked. I knew they would think I was crazy if I told them everything. "Nothing." "Bullocks." They all muttered. "When was the last time you ate anything?" one asked. I looked up at him. They were all slightly blurry and my head really ached. "I dunno, 3 or 4 days," I muttered. Who ran back into the door while the other looked me over. "We need to get you to a hospital." I shot upright and groaned. "No." "Why?" I couldn't tell him I was a pregnant fucking werewolf, so I told him the other reason. "I don't want anyone to know where I am." "Why?" he asked. He sat down beside me now and made a move to brush my hair from my face. I flinched away from him and shuddered. He looked startled and then a look of understand flashed across his face. "Did someone hurt ye, touchy?" I flinched that I was that obvious and looked away from him. "No point in lying about that now. You need to tell Suman." I shook my head. "No, then the res would find me. Everyone hates me for it," I whispered. I couldn't go home. "Nah, no one hates ye," he whispered. "I can't go back," I choked out and curled onto my side. His friends came back and they had food with them. They offered it to me and I gladly ate it all. Looking back at them I whispered, "Thank you." They nodded and smiled. They gave me some better fitting clothes and offered me their shower, but I couldn't go into their home. It terrified me. The one man nodded and shushed me, telling me he understood. I sighed. They went back and while I hid and changed, then threw my other cloths away. I traveled down the street aimlessly and sniffed out the best I could for forest. I noticed the sun coming up and I got really nervous. I decided to find a place to hide and lay down for the day. I found a small park and was excited when I saw a small area with a large drain pipe. I ran to it, slipped from my clothes and laying them upon my back to hopefully keep them dry and changed. I laid my muzzle upon my paws and whimpered quietly. This pipe was very uncomfortable, but I was surrounded in darkness and no one could see me. I didn't know where I was so I knew the pack wouldn't be able to find out. I spent 2 weeks in that city. Hunting the small game from the park and sleeping in the pipe. I noticed people started staying away from the park and animal catchers in the park and knew it was time to move on. Besides, it was getting harder to find food in this park and I hadn't been able to find anything to eat in the last 2 days. I had a slight bump now and it was getting a little uncomfortable in the pipe. I was starting to really care for these pups and changing was starting to scare me. I didn't know what it would do to them. So I tried to change as little as possible. I slipped from the pipe in human form in the smelly clothes that I'd been wearing for the last 2 weeks. Thank God the pants were sweats because they were starting to get tight. I walked down the sidewalk and followed the line to a stand. Quietly I looked at a man. "Sir?" I whispered. He turned around and looked me up and down and I watched as his face turned into a scowl. I sighed. I know I looked like shit, but his reaction made me feel even worse. "Can you tell me where the closest forest area is?" He grabbed a piece of paper and drew the map, marking roads and other things. Handing it to me, he scowled again and took off. I sighed. I was starving and my stomach rumbled loudly. I just started walking following the map that man drew for me. It took a few hours before I could even smell it. I was weak and tired and still afraid. I saw a little bushed area and crawled over to it. I curled into a ball between 2 of the bigger bushes and decided I needed to rest and sleep. Edward Pav. I sat in that dusty attic wallowing in my self-misery. I was frustrated and heartbroken. I caught a weird scent. It was wolf, but something was different about it. That's odd. I couldn't really put my finger on what was different. But it was a male scent, but it held. I dunno. An underlying of female. The female was almost strong. Maybe a male with a female scent on it. It truly puzzled me. I moved to the window silently and opened it. I sniffed the air and stumbled backwards a little. "Jacob." I growled deep in my throat. I could kill him now. Or have him kill me. I jumped from the window and let my nose guide me to some bushes. As I got closer, I noticed a multitude of other odors. I had to force myself not to gag. The boy smelt like barf and bodily wastes and sweat and blood. But I noticed the female smell. That's when I clued in. The female scent was his scent. It was strange. I stepped into the bushes and what I saw almost caused my heart to start beating again. Jacob Black was curled into a ball, asleep. I could see he's lost a lot of weight and he's weak. His cloths hung loosely from everywhere but his stomach area and they were filthy. I knelt down beside him. "Jacob." He stirred a little and mumbled something about pups. I carefully reached out to brush his cheek. I felt bad for him. He wasn't here on vacation. "Jacob." I said again. He rolled over onto his back but did nothing else. I reached slowly to his shoulder and gave him a gentle shake. "Jacob." His eyes fluttered open and I watched as understanding lit his eyes. He groaned while he sat up and wrapped his arms around his stomach. I thought I heard something odd pass through his mind. My pups. "Jacob, what happened?" He tried to move away but clearly didn't have the strength to do much. This time I definitely heard "protect my pups." I looked around listening for more breathing but heard nothing. "Jacob, please tell me what happened. I promise not to hurt you." He sighed and tried to move away from me again. I heard his stomach growl fiercely. Jacob, when did you last eat? I saw him think about his meal at the park, then walking here. I sighed and scooped him up in my arms. He tried to struggle, but I just cradled him to my chest. Let me go. He tried to shout, but it came as less than a whisper. I'm just taking you to get something to eat. I held him closer and started to run. I haven't hunted in a few months, hell even moved really, but I couldn't die of starvation, he could. I found that as I ran I enjoyed holding him. I'm not sure if it was to do with the fact that this is my first contact with anyone since Bella's funeral. That was almost a year ago. But when I touched his shoulder, I felt a spark like I used to feel with Bella. It confused me. Once I got to a clearing within the forest, I laid Jacob on the grass by a small pool of water and held his face in my hands. I'm going to see if I can't get you something big. Do you have the energy to change? I saw a brief flicker of terror and he shook his head no. I sighed. Okay, I'll get you a panther if I can, but please don't leave. Just stay here. I promise on Bella's grave I'm not going to hurt you. He seemed startled that I would say that, but I had to have him know I would not hurt him. He sighed and I cupped some water to his lips. He drank it greedily and coughed a little. He was dehydrated and starving. Leaning him back down and slipping my jacket around him, I took off to find Jacob something to eat. While I ran I tried to sort out why I had this need to help him. What this need to protect him was. I didn't understand what I was feeling. I caught the scent of a large predator and quickly jumped it, snapping its neck. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket and I pulled it out to see Alice's name on the screen. Hello Alice, I said calmly. Something was telling me to get back to Jacob, but I had a feeling this call had to do with him. Why have you disappeared? She roared so loud I'm sure Jacob could have heard it. What do you mean Alice? I was sitting reading when I saw a vision of you leaving an attic. Then you disappeared, now I can see you hunting, then you disappear again. I think it has to do with Jacob Black I started. What? I heard Alice's, Jasper's, and Rosalie's voices bellow. Alice I need you to go back to Forks, try to and find out why Jacob isn't at home. He's a mess. He's so dehydrated and hungry and exhausted he can't even really think. He doesn't even have the strength to change. He saved Bella once. I'm going to help him. I could hear Jasper softly talking to Alice about what she's seeing. Edward. I'm here Alice I replied, picking up the carcass and starting on my way back to Jacob. Your future just completely went dark. I know you're still there, I just can't see you. What do you mean Alice? Remember when Bella went to see Jacob or the other wolves? Yes. Well it's the same thing with you. I know you're not dead because I see you here with us again, but it's blurry and weird and I can barely make out any details. How about I keep you updated? Something is going on with him Alice. Something is wrong and I intend to find out. He helped Bella, I have to help him. Edward, you don't have to justify anything to me, just do what you wish, I'll fly down to Forks tomorrow and see what I can find. But it's going to be hard with not being able to get on the reservation. I know Alice, thank you. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and ran back to Jacob. I quickly ripped the animal into pieces he should be able to chew and swallow. I sat him back up and cupped some more water to him, then piled the pieces onto the skin of the animal. He ate the meat, gagging a little, and then sighed. I'm going to take you somewhere to sleep that's safe. When you wake up, please tell me what happened. He nodded, still not thinking about anything other than he's finally full. I stroked his cheek with my knuckles before I could realize what I was doing, surprising both of us, and then scooped him up and ran him to a cave just a few feet into the forest. I laid him down and covered him with my jacket again. Taking my shirt off, I balled it up and slipped it under his head. Thank you Edward, he whispered just before he fell asleep. I sat and tried to figure everything that had happened and why I was suddenly drawn to Jacob's scent. Then something occurred to me, both times I laid my jacket on him and placed his head on my shirt, he didn't even grimace with my smell. Has Jacob lost his sense of smell? Jacob Pav. When I woke up again, I felt nauseous. Covering my mouth I scrammed as fast as I could from the empty cave opening and got sick in a bush. Stupid morning sickness. When I was done being sick, I fell to my ass and leaned back. I rubbed my stomach trying to ease the nauseous feeling. I felt a cold hand rest on my forehead and I bolted upright. SHHH. I didn't mean to startle you, I had a velvety voice speak. I knew this voice and growled. I immediately felt guilty because he'd helped me. Why? Was all I asked. I knew he could read in my thoughts. I didn't understand why he had helped me. I didn't know if I was thankful for the help or wished he just would have killed me. He stood and ran his hand through his hair. Honestly, I don't know. But I do know I owe you for helping. His voice caught and then stopped. I knew who he was talking about. I couldn't think her name either. This whole situation was just harder because she wasn't there for me either. Edward turned to me after a few silent moments. I watched as many emotions ran across his face too fast for me to name, then he crouched down to my level. What happened? I turned my head away and forgetting about his ability. I don't want him to know about Sam and the litter I'm now carrying. How Sam broke pack law and impregnated me. How he betrayed me and I ran. How I'm scared to shit and alone, I don't want him to know any of it. I didn't notice how Edward had stood and was pacing listening to me internally hating myself and being really confused. He was facing me now, with a pain-saddened look on his face. I don't even know if I want these pups. I'm 16, damn it. Maybe I should just get him to kill me or do it myself. Edward was suddenly crouched down in front of me, my face is his hands, his eyes scanning my tear-filled ones. You're pregnant? He asked astonished. Just as I started to lift my head to nod he finished his sentence and you want to die. I didn't know how to answer that. I really was just too scared and confused about what I wanted, what I was feeling, about everything to answer. I just tried to pull my face from his hands, but his hold tightened minutely and he didn't let me. Jacob, what did Sam do to you? Why do you care? Just then Edward's phone rang and he sighed. Standing, the vampire answered his phone. Yes. Edward, Alice hasn't been able to find anything. I was thinking she should set up a meeting with the pack, maybe talking to them would answer some questions. I know what happened, Jasper. He sighed. Jacob was impregnated by the alpha. Silence was the answer. I can hear the pup's hearts beating when he's asleep now. My stomach growled again and I stood and starting taking off the shirt. How many? 8. I had just finished shifting, then looked at Edward as he spoke. Before I could register in my head that he was even standing there, I saw a flash of bright light and with a growl I was on Edward. My teeth had sunk into shoulder. I had barely punctured his skin before my jaw was laxed and removed from his shoulder. I was panting stupidly, standing over Edward. He didn't even cry out. Noticing where I was standing, but not what had just happened, I climbed off Edward and fell to my side, Billy beside him. He didn't even blink and I laid there for a few seconds before I realized what had just happened. I just imprinted. Oh God. Edward's head suddenly snapped up and towards me as I started to whimper. You. Imprinted on me. Edward started quiet then as his voice rose, jumped to his feet. Jasper's pav. I heard the growl then the phone tumble on the ground. I heard the 2 soft thuds of bodies hitting the ground. It was silent then someone shuffled off the other. The wolf whimpered, then Edward's voice started quietly. You. Imprinted on me. His voice raised to hysterical. I was sitting in the living room of the Cullen mansion in Forks. I lost the control on my ability and my distress and shock and terror emitted throughout the house. I was frozen as Carlisle and Emmett rushed into the living room. Carlisle was gripping my shoulders shaking me gently. Jasper. I couldn't really register what was going on around me in my stupor. Only Edward and I really knew of the wolves' true feeling for us. Carlisle and I had sat down the first time we had moved to Forks and he had told me all about the wolves. I knew everything that him and Edward knew. I knew that Jacob imprinting brought the wolf into our lives and probably had him removed from his. I pitied the young man, pregnant, which in itself is almost impossible, but almost imprinted on a vampire. Finally my eyes snapped from the wall to his and I chalked out black imprinted on Edward. Carlisle froze and Emmett sat heavily. I gritted my teeth in an attempt to handle the onslaught of everyone's emotions. Apparently the whole family heard. God, those 2 must be freaking and Jacob is even more unstable with the hormones. I need to go for them, I hate the dog, but I'd heard a story of what happens when the wolf and vampire ignore the imprintation. They need to do this, work this out, so save themselves and those around them. I shot my head to Emmett and growled, where is he now? Edward Pav. I couldn't believe what just happened. I'd been bitten by a wolf before and it hurt almost as much as turning, but when Jacob had bitten me, I only felt warmth. There was no pain, discomfort, nothing. I was shocked and scared and terrified to be truthful. Jacob had panted on his side for a few moments before he fell asleep. Apparently being pregnant and imprinting took a lot out of you. I still hadn't picked my phone back up. I'm sure Jasper heard what had happened. Jacob's stomach growled in his sleep. I sighed and picked up my cell. He was still in his wolf form, so I scooped him up and carried him to the cave again. Laying him on the floor, I turned and left to hunt for him, and I both. I quickly came upon a small herd of moose and took a few down. I drank 3 dry, knowing that we were going to have to go back home. I dragged 2 with me back to Jacob. He was still asleep so I left the moose on the ground outside of the cave and went in and sat beside him. Listening into his dreams I discovered him dreaming of me. I was startled into silence. He was dreaming of him and I playing with the puppies. I didn't understand this. I knew that once imprinted, the wolf would be what the imprintee needed him to be. Jacob and I were mortal enemies. I didn't need him in my life. But I knew that we were bonded. Jacob's dream shifted to him and I sharing a passionate kiss. This caused me to jump to my feet and race from the cave. I didn't stop, I couldn't. I still loved my Bella. Yes, she may have succeeded in her suicide, but I still loved her. Jacob. He was my enemy, a wolf and a man. I couldn't love him. There was too much between us to do that. I didn't hate him for not saving Bella. I had actually provoked him to see if the wolves wouldn't just kill me. But Jasper had sensed my contentment when I walked into them and my elation and quickly realized my intention and stopped me. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't love Jake. Did I just call that mutt? Jake. My cell phone brought me out of my internal hatred and beat down for that thought. Hello? Edward, stay where you are, I'm coming to get you both. You need to come home. Jenks is currently making a passport up for Jacob under a different name. I'll bring clean clothes for both of you. I sighed. I knew we needed to head back to make sense of things and find out what Sam's side of things were, but I didn't want this to happen. Jasper, noting my hesitation, spoke again. Edward, you don't have to come home yet. I'll be there. I'm coming no matter what, but we don't need to be home right away. Thank you, Jasper, I whispered. How do you feel about all of this? He asked. His psychology degree coming out in him. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I'm scared shitless. I just caught Jacob dreaming of him and I kissing and I was a little excited about it, but I can't be gay. I feel connected to him now and something made me leave that attic for a stupid funny smell, then help him. When I found him, Jasper, he could barely keep his eyes open and he was starving. He hadn't eaten more than half a sandwich from a dumpster in over 4 days. I could have killed him while he slept. But I couldn't. I don't understand it. It's revolting, but then oddly not. I sighed and ran my hand through my hair. Sam basically raped him, Jasper. He's hurting in so many ways and is just as confused and stressed as I am. I desperately want to help him. I don't get it though. Edward, I don't either. Carlisle is contacting as many old friends as he can, but none of them have heard of a werewolf imprinting on a vampire. I'm contemplating demanding a meeting with the Quillets, but I'm not sure if I should or not. Alice can't see the meeting because of the wolves. I know, Jasper. Talk to Carlisle, see what he thinks. But promise me that you will not go by yourself. This is going to be a shock. I'd like to wait until we're home to tell them. But I want Jacob away from the Minka. Sam demands Jacob come home. I want him to make that decision on his own, not be told by his alpha. Can Jacob still hear the others when he's shifted? I don't know, but I never heard them when he was. I'll ask him when he wakes up. Alright, I'll wait for your call. I can't fly out until tomorrow, Edward, but I'll be on a plane first thing. Thank you, Jasper, and with that we hung up. Jasper would never know how much it means that he's coming. I think he's going to be the only one able to help us figure out what our feelings are and help us through them. Something shifted in the air around me and I got an ill feeling. I spun on my heels and raced faster than I ever had back to Jake and the puppies. As I approached, a herd of lions were stalking the cave that held a frightened, whimpering Jacob Black. I skidded to a halt when I was in view of the cave. Jacob's thoughts made my heart clench in a way that it only did for Bella and my stomach to drop. I slid into a crouch before I noticed I had done it and I growled deep in my chest. I was telling these animals he was mine, to leave him alone. A few shrank back, but others turned to my direction. I growled deeper in my chest, producing a sound that I had never heard escape my lips before. One hissed at me and lunged. Jacob whined and barked in fear, but I dodged the large animal and snapped at it. Jacob's thoughts were distracting and my head snapped in his direction and the lion tackled me to the ground. Before it could try to lodge its teeth into my neck, my arm was up and its teeth sank into my arm. I growled again at the slight discomfort and snapped the animal's neck and pushed it from me as I jumped to my feet. Again I slid into a crouch and growled deep in my chest. The others backed away slowly, then ran. Jacob, still in his wolf form, dashed from the dark cave and was at my side, licking where the lion had bitten me and whimpering worriedly. I dropped to my knees and held his muzzle lightly between my hands. Looking into the wolf's eyes, I was startled to find them silver. Jacob's pack's eyes were all wolf yellow. The last time I had seen him as a wolf, they were yellow. I'd worry more about this after. Right now, I was holding a pregnant, trembling werewolf between my hands. Are you alright? I asked him. Yes. But the question should be, are you? He answered in his mind. I'm fine, only a little discomfort when his teeth tried to sink in. I removed my hands from his muzzle and showed him my arm. See, not even a mark. Eat, Jasper is coming tomorrow. He's bringing cloths and passports. I'd like to go home soon, but we don't have to until you're ready. Which reminds me, can you hear your pack in your mind? No. Not since I imprinted on you. I'm sorry, Edward. I didn't want to imprint on you, I'm really sorry. I'll admit I don't like it, but it's nothing that can be helped. Eat, then I want to know everything that you know about imprinting. Okay. He nodded his muzzle and stuck his tongue out in a lopsided wolfy grin. I chuckled at him and jumped into the cave and slipped my shirt on. We'd need to head into town tomorrow to pick up Jasper at the airport. I slipped my phone from my pocket and texted Jasper. Jake and I will meet you at the airport tomorrow. He can't hear the others, and I'm not sure if that has something to do with being far away from them or imprinting on me. He said he couldn't hear them after, but he had yet to shift since he boarded the ship to get over here. See you tomorrow. I want to wait until we're home to talk with the wolves. Okay. Keep safe, Edward. Alice had a vision of you and some lions about 30 minutes ago. Could she see Jacob? Because a pack of lions were threatening him. I think so. She never said anything, just ran out the door mumbling something about seeing them both instead of blankets. Thanks, Jasper, for everything. But that I turned my phone off and left the cave. Jacob was still eating. Jake, I'm going to go get you some clothes. What size are you? He told me his size in his head and I knew I'd need to get something a size or two bigger. I rushed off to the mall in the city and returned not even 40 minutes later with a few outfits for Jake and a few blankets and pillows. By then he had finished eating and shifted back. He was sitting in the cold stream water shivering. Jake, why are you in the water if you're cold? I shouldn't be, he whispered. I walked up behind him and kneeled down, putting my hand on his shoulder. He turned to face me and sighed. He knew that I heard it. Cold used to never bother me, nor was I ever this tired or hungry or useless. I was the best tracker and fighter in the pack. I'm just scared and confused and lost, Edward, he said, turning back out into the water. I sighed and pulled him from the water and handed him a bag, keeping my eyes on his face. Change Jake and we'll talk to Carlisle. Maybe he will know something or we'll have a theory. I got some blankets and a few pillows for you too. He smiled and nodded as I turned and shuffled into the cave at a human pace. I laid out the 4 blankets and then the pillows and Jacob came into the cave. It was nearing twilight now and he climbed in between the blankets and sighed. I laid down beside him and he looked up at me from his side. All I know about imprinting is that once a wolf imprints he needs to be around the imprintee. He'll be what the imprintee needs, lover, friend, brother, mentor, or the purple monkey from the animal cracker Chimericals. That much I knew, but I was wondering what it meant to vampires and if wolves could imprint on us. I looked under my shirt to see if there were marks still from his gentle bite. I could see the marks, but somehow they had graced my shoulder and they were beautiful. I was stunned by this thought. Jake sat up and looked at the marks himself. He ran his finger over the curve of them, causing me to shudder, and he whispered, I'm sorry again. They're beautiful, I whispered. To ease his fears and because I just wanted to. He smiled and laid back down. He was asleep before he was completely comfortable. I sat beside him most of the night. He was dreaming of what Sam had done to him. He was whimpering and kicking his leg while he laid on his side facing away from me. I smiled at his puppy-like antics but found myself growing angered at what Jake was reliving in his mind. Sam had truly hurt him and it was rape. Jacob had told him no. I felt the growl escape my lips silently as I lifted my hand to smooth his long back locks. He calmed and the dream stopped when my fingers started to play with his hair. I could feel the electricity flow from each other. The air crackled it against my skin as he rolled to his other side and rested his cheek on my stomach. I found it odd and it reminded me so much of Bella, but I found it oddly comforting. I continued to stroke his hair softly until I woke him at daybreak, knowing we had to leaving to go get Jasper. Jacob Pav. Jake, wake up, Edward's soft voice drifted into my dreams and I felt myself shake lightly. I breathed in a strong breath and was startled to find that Edward didn't stink. His smell had changed. My brows furrowed as I tried to place the new smells. He used to smell sickeningly sweet, now it was foresty and musty, with a vanilla hint. It was like the forest covered in the morning dew, the mossy patches most prominent also lightly sprinkled with vanilla. It was amazing. I drew in another deep breath and sighed looking up at his face. He seemed to be deep in thought and that's when I realized where I was. It startled me that he had let me lay on him and I bolted upright, my stomach gurgling uncomfortably. Edward's hand had fallen from my hair and that seemed to get his attention. He looked over at me and my mouth was already open to apologize. I'm sorry. I whispered. His brow furrowed and he cocked his head to the side in question. I didn't mean to snuggle up to you. He sighed and sat up, his hand reaching towards me. He hesitated just short of my cheek for a moment. I locked my eyes with his. He seemed to search for something. I was lost in his eyes, seeing every fleck and speckle that changed the color of his eye in an area. They were almost hazel again. Finally his hand rested on my cheek and I nuzzled his hand. His face seemed to soften and I reached my hand up to hold his there. His eyes darted out to the forest when we heard a rustle. Suddenly he was crouched before me, his stance defensive. I sent my thoughts out to him. Edward? Do you hear someone? Is someone out there? The barely there nod was the only answer I got. Again the trees rustled and a wolf I recognized right away stepped out of the trees. Edward growled deep in his chest, the sound was more primal than the night before with the lions. My heart was pounding in my chest and I whimpered and pushed back against the wall and hugged the pillow to my stomach. No. Edward roared at the large wolf. Suddenly the wolf turned and galloped off into the trees, only to return a few moments later, his hands covering his nakedness. I whimpered again, the fear and embarrassment and shame re-enginting as the memory of what Sam did replayed in my mind. Sam was saying something, but the angle of Edward's head told me he wasn't listening to the wolf in front of him. He was reading my memory. Suddenly Edward was flying through the air and pounced on Sam. They both growled and I whimpered, nothing blocking me from Sam now. You raped him. Edward growled through clenched teeth. I flicked. I didn't want him to know, I didn't want anyone to know. It was my fault. I didn't fight back. And I felt so nasty and dirty and stupid and worthless because I came at the end. Jacob, you are to come home now. I stiffened and waited for the pain that was sure to come from disobeying my alpha. See, when we disobeyed, it hurt because our muscles tried to make us follow the order, but when we resisted, it was overwhelming in the pain. But strangely the order meant nothing to me, and my wolf snarled at the order. No, I whispered. Sam and Edward both froze and then eyed me with shock on their faces. They both knew somehow the bond as my leader, my alpha was broken, Sam had no control of me. This gave me a little confidence against the older wolf. What did you say? Sam asked in a quiet but deadly voice. No, I don't want anything to do with you. Stay away from me and the puppies. Goodbye Samily, I whispered. I was still trembling in fear of what Sam would do, my mind racing with possibilities. Never, I blood bonded with you, being the superior wolf you should have to listen to me whether I'm alpha or not. Jacob Black, I will kick your ass all the way home if you do not get out of that cave and come willingly. Edward snarled and snapped at Sam, they tussled on the ground. All I could do was keep my eyes squeezed tight and whimper as I tried to block out that night. Suddenly there was a growl coming from behind the trees and I whimpered in fear even more, scared to death now that another wolf was with Sam. Edward seemed to relax a little and then Jasper came flying into the clearing. The snarl on his face was turned to Sam and he growled deeply again. Not knowing how the vampire would react to me, I whimpered in fear again and edged myself into the corner, turning my back out to protect my stomach. I heard snarls and snapping of teeth. The sounds all faded into the same tone, but I was still somehow able to know who was who. About 10 minutes later, I heard a yelp and a whimper from Sam. Then I felt the pop of a wolf changing, then heard 4 paws scamper off into the distance. I was still so fearful that I didn't come out of my space. Still scared of Jasper. I could hear their breathing at the opening of the cave and hushed whispers. I heard a set of footsteps come towards me and I growled deep and threateningly. A warning not to come any closer. At this time my fear for my pups and myself kicked my instincts into overdrive and they took over my mind. The steps stopped. I heard someone shift onto all fours and crawl towards me as a tiny wave of calm washed over me. I was confused by the change in feeling and my fear heightened. Edward, I'm sending my strongest waves out and they're barely touching him. All it's doing is scaring him more. Jasper's voice was somewhere recognizable in my muddled brain. I heard the person behind me inching closer and I growled louder and more angrily. Once I felt the person almost right behind me, I turned and sprang. I shifted painfully in midair and I felt my stomach clench and I yelped. I landed on Edward, my fear still overriding me. The pain dulled slightly and I growled. The one under me raked his arms around my shaking form and tried to pull me to his chest. I growled and bared my teeth in warning. The man was talking to me, but I was so lost to my instincts that I couldn't understand what the man was saying. I growled again, then felt ice-cold strong fingers tangle in the scruff of my neck. I snorted then breathed deep to confirm my suspicions that this was Edward. Once I was able to smell him, I knew it was him and let myself sink shakily to his chest. Jasper Pav. The emotions coming from the 3 creatures around me almost caused me to collapse. It was Edward's determination that I pulled from to keep my sharing ability locked up tightly as I slammed Sam into the ground. Edward tried to rip the wolf's arm off, but only succeeded in dislocating it and causing a yelp to pull from his lips. Sam shifted suddenly and I had to lock my jaw to keep from screaming out in pain. His change caused his shoulder to relocate and he scrambled in utter terror and defeat. There was still anger there, I knew this wasn't the last time we would see Sam. Edward was already at the mouth of the cave and I rushed to join him. Jacob's fear grew exponentially and caused me to stumble. He's absolutely terrified Edward. It's the most fear I've ever felt. His instincts have taken over. He has no control anymore. Take it slow, I'll send out calming waves, but he's such a loose cannon. I trailed. Jasper I turned to Edward then and was assaulted with his gratitude. Thank you for helping me. For everything I nodded and smiled at him, placing my hand on his shoulder, sending him some calm and confidence. You're my brother Edward, and if he's meant to be in your future, then he's my brother too. I'd do anything to help you. Besides, he's pregnant and had enough to deal with before imprinting on his enemy. I replied, then told him the tale I had heard about the vampire and the wolf ignoring the imprinting. Edward shuddered at the end. Thank you for telling me that, he whispered in a tone only my ears would pick up. I feared the boy was alert, just helpless in his body. I didn't want him to have anything else to be afraid of or worry about. Edward nodded and took a step forward towards the boy. His growling came out louder and his fear intensified. Edward, crawl to him. It might make him less afraid if you're smaller than him. Edward dropped to his knees and crawled a few steps towards him. Jacob's fear just intensified even more and I whimpered at the intensity of it. I sent out my strongest waves of calm, but it only increased his fear even more. I then tried my strongest steady stream of calm and focused only on Jacob. He didn't even feel it. I realized then, I was missing something. Edward was being slow and loud and making himself smaller and Jacob's fear was just increasing. He went through something that scared him emotionally. I felt sorry for the boy then. Edward, I'm sending my strongest waves out and they're barely touching him. All it's doing is scaring him more. I spoke aloud while I sent Edward my thoughts on this. Edward nodded and a sadness washed through him, then became determination so fast my head spun. Before I could say anything, Jacob pounced and shifted. I felt a strong pain tear through my lower abdomen and slowly fade. The initial pain caused me to double over and by the intensity alone, I knew it was Jacob. Edward was telling Jacob to calm down and that everything was alright. Jacob's eyes were on me, but I could feel the blankness coming from him. He snorted and breathed, then relaxed minutely. He tested the air and then allowed Edward to pull him to his chest. Jacob's fear suddenly became a quarter of what it was and Edward's anxiety diminished. Edward cradled the wolf to his chest and hummed to him. I felt the care and kindness and peace between the two and suddenly felt as if I was intruding on something. There was no lust or love yet. But it was dangerously close for both. I turned and sat at the bottom of the cave opening. Jacob soon fell asleep in Edward's arms and he sighed quietly. They stayed that way for a few hours. Eventually Jacob stirred and whimpered. I felt the pain in my abdomen and it dawned on me what it was. I jumped from the opening and raced to Jacob's side. It's hurting to be changed like this, isn't it? I asked him as I ran my fingers through the scruff of his neck. He whimpered and laid his head on my knee. In that moment I understood the wolf. He was scared and confused, but he was doing anything and everything in his power to protect those pups. I would do the same for my family. His pups were all he really knew as completely family right now. I looked at Edward, who was looking at me funny, emulating from him. Being in this form is changing his anatomy. Which is putting pressure on his stomach. It's hurting him. He can't change until he's given birth. Jacob looked up at me, fear still slightly emulating from him. I caressed him scruff again and asked him. Do you think you can change? It's going to hurt, but I'm going to try to help with that, okay? Jacob nodded and Edward released him. It took about half an hour, he had to change slowly and it was taking its toll. Once he was changed he was asleep and Edward clothed him quickly. Jasper? I turned back to Edward and smiled. Sam thought something about birth and Jacob was in wolf form. He trailed off. I think I knew what he was pondering. I think if he was mostly wolf by now, things would be different. He'd be in pain to change into a human. But because the puppies have been developing while he was mostly in his human form, which is how he is going to need to deliver them. He thought for a moment and then nodded. Because of that, I think we need to think about going home. He was malnourished for most of his pregnancy so far and he's going to need a checkup and I want Carlisle to take a look and see how the pups are. I said, back facing out from the cave. A small twinge of sadness coursed through Edward but then was replaced with a bit of horror. I snapped my head back to him. Edward? I asked kindly while he stood frozen. I never thought about the pups being underdeveloped or having any complications. It's alright. We don't know enough about this, Edward. It's not your fault. He didn't think of it either. I said. Let's head to the airport. We'll walk. You carry Jacob, I'll carry the rest. Edward nodded and changed into clean clothes. We walked in silence and when we arrived near the airport Jacob was starting to stir. Hey, Edward. He croaked. I'm here. We're heading back to Forks. You need to be checked out and the pups too. He nodded and I watched as he snuggled into Edward's chest. Edward, you're going to need to have him walking around at the airport. It'll alert people if they see you carrying a man twice your size. He nodded and got Jake on his feet. I got our tickets and 2 hours later we were on a plane to Forks. Edward Pav. Jake snuggled up to me and slept the entire 20-hour plane ride back to the US. I took the time to rehash my medical school training and tried to evaluate Jake's condition. He was definitely still showing signs of starvation, but I knew that with what he's been eating since I found him, he has to be feeling better. When Jasper said that Jake shouldn't phase again until after the birth, panic flashed in Jake's mind. Not being able to phase would render him almost defenseless. He would need to rely on others, but he felt like he should be able to take care of and protect his pups. Something was different with me around. I know he feared my safety with Sam, but seeing what Sam did to Jacob as it ran over and over in his mind just made me more and more angered. Through Jasper's mind, I knew that he was doing more than just thinking about it. Jake was in a constant state of fear. It was a flashback on constant loop, and in it Sam's bark snapped him out enough for him to know there were two others behind him. Then something registered that slightly shocked me. When Jacob was listening to my approach, his hearing was diminished, and so was his sense of smell. Another worry was that he didn't sense me behind him. Once you've imprinted, you always sense your imprintee when they're within 5 miles of you. This all bothered me a great deal. I needed to speak to Carlisle about it when I got home. I'd ask Jasper, but he's relaxing and concentrating on his control. Besides, with Jake resting on my chest, I knew he'd feel my voice even if he didn't hear it. I sighed and wrapped him in my arms and pulled him closer. We'd asked the flight attendant for a pillow and blanket and I'd given them to Jake. He was asleep so I leaned him against the window, slipped the pillow behind his head and wrapped the blanket around him. About 5 minutes later he shifted his body and leaned onto me. By this point the seatbelt sign was off so I leaned my seat back towards Jasper, who growled but then noticed Jake settle himself onto my chest. He smiled and I saw it in his head that he was really happy for us. He knew that we both needed someone and apparently this was how fate decided on our healing. He knew that I would always love Bella, but with the feelings he was getting, he knew Jake already loved me and I was teetering on the edge. I was worried that Bella would be mad at me for loving her Jake. Part of me knew she wouldn't, she'd want our happiness. I knew also that she should hate me. I caused her to take her own life. It was my fault. My leaving had failed miserably. As much as I love my Bella, she isn't here anymore and Jake needs someone to love him, he needs me to love him. Bella still loved Jake and would at least want him to be happy and cared for. I had a feeling it didn't matter who it was, but this was my way of showing her I was sorry I failed and fucked up royally with her. This was my repentance and my way to thank Jake for what he had done for her in my absence. More than anything else though, this was my chance to make someone happy and to be happy. The plane landed smoothly in Port Angeles and Jasper led us out to my Volvo. I quirked a brow at him. I wasn't sure when you were coming home and I didn't want to strand anyone without their car. Besides you know I'd never hurt your baby. I chuckled at him and told him to drive if he wanted. He stared at me for a few seconds, but I just wanted to hold Jake. I knew the fear was starting to creep up on him the closer we got to Forks. The drive was quiet. Jasper had some old classical-like country music playing very softly in the speakers while I hummed into Jake's ear to keep him calm. When we pulled up to the house, everyone was outside in a flash. Carlisle was almost frantic to see me. Jake had just sat up when the door was wrenched open on my side by Carlisle while Esme flung open Jake's. We were snatched from the car and I was surprised that it was Carlisle who had pulled me out and was now hugging me in a death grip. What I'm sure shocked everyone was that he was sobbing. My feet were off the ground, Carlisle had his face crushed into my chest with his arms under mine. Esme was stroking Jake's face while she smiled at him. After a few moments Carlisle set me down on my feet and Esme caught me up in her arms. Carlisle was talking with Jasper while Jake limbered around the car and came to my side. He's scared and confused and nervous. Jasper shared Jake's feelings with me and I nodded so slight in response that Jasper almost missed it. I could read in Jake's mind he was scared of being so close to the border and he was worried the family would not like him. Wouldn't approve. Jake, no one will let Sam or any of the other Cooliots near you unless you're okay with it. I stroked his cheek and I was surprised when he leaned into my hand and sighed. He enjoyed the difference in our body temperatures, as did I. He was content with me around and I found myself falling for this pup in front of me. I grabbed his hand when his stomach rumbled and pulled him into the house. Esme had told me Alice saw us coming home and had gone for food for Jake. Once I got Jake some soup, I called Alice, Jasper, and Carlisle to his office. Jasper and I relayed what had happened. We started from the day I found Jake and shared everything up to our return trip home. Carlisle, would you check him out? He was starving, and the pups, and complications I stuttered out. I found myself once again a little surprised by the emotions that I felt for Jake and the pups. Of course son. He asked a few questions about how Jake was once he started to be nourished and taken care of. No morning sickness in the last 2 days, but Jasper's kept him asleep. But he was pretty sick a few times. Jasper then explained our theories. Carlisle decided that we needed to talk with his father or someone else from the reserve to find out about what we need to expect. We just hoped that someone would cooperate and Billy seemed like the most likely candidate. Alice, how did you know we were coming home? I asked her. I can see Jake now. He's the only one I can see. I'm not sure if it has to do with imprinting on you or him being pregnant. I nodded. He's more human now than ever. He's unable to change, it's a lot more painful, and his senses have decreased. He's almost at a human point for his smelling and hearing. His sight is down a bit as well. I think it's the puppies. They're taking a lot out of him. I sighed a little anxious about him being so vulnerable. I didn't think he would be comfortable with it anymore. I wasn't sure he would remember his human instincts and not his wolf. It's like his wolf is drained or weakened. Jasper added. His instincts are still wolf, but the emotions I was getting from him told me he was afraid because of his lack of ability to actually protect his pups. Jasper launched into the cave scene and Carlisle blanched. He should have sensed Edward or smelled him, Carlisle murmured. I thought the same thing. We really need help from Billy. This is bothering me. I don't like him being so defenseless. Not with Sam around. He's the alpha. No one can stop him. Carlisle decided to give Billy a call and see if he would meet with him. After that we all left. Jasper followed Alice to their room and I found Emmett playing a game with Jake. Thank you, Emmett. He nodded. He was a little worried about where you went off to. What I don't understand is why he couldn't hear the conversation you were all having. It's weird. His senses are dulled. We don't understand it any more than you do. Jake stretched and I helped him upstairs. Once we were in my room, I grabbed a book and curled up on my couch. I invited Jake to lie down and place his head in my lap. I started to run my fingers through his hair softly. How are you feeling? I inquired. A little nauseous, but I'm okay other than that. I'm just scared of what Sam will do. I promise you that I will die before he gets within 100 feet of you, I growled, my hand temporarily tightening in his hair. He gently placed his hand to rest on my cheek. I didn't mean to upset you. I know, I sighed and ran my other hand through my hair. But what he did, I flinched and grimaced, followed by Jake's flinch and a bout of shivering. I noted the distress in his thoughts and started moving my hand through his hair. Carlisle is contacting your dad for all the information he can get about your pregnancy. I think that he should invite him for dinner. Carlisle will tell your father everything. I want you to talk to him. He's your dad, Jake. I know that your father was the one who agreed to Sam creating a blood bond, but I do not think he meant in the means that Sam went about it. He loves you, sweetheart. You need him in your life if you can, and so will our pups. He looked up at me with a vulnerable look in his beautiful eyes. I'm scared of what he's going to say. Wait. Our pups. Do you mean that? I nodded. I love you, Jacob Black, and so does your father. He may not like it, but he will love you no matter what. He smiled up at me and whispered, I love you, Edward. I smiled and reached to the table for the book. I opened it to the first page and started reading softly to him. Carlisle Pav. I was in my study trying to figure out the best way to tell Billy Black, a pack elder, that his son, the rightful alpha, is pregnant and has imprinted on my son, a vampire and their mortal enemy. I've been sitting here for over an hour listening to my son read a book to his boyfriend. I sighed and pinched the bridge of my nose, a habit that I picked up from Edward. Jasper, I said softly. A few moments later there was a knock on the door and then Jasper walked in. Carlisle, what can I help with? For the life of me, I cannot figure out how to tell Billy. I started as wave of calm settled over me and I rolled my shoulders. Thank you. Carlisle, I suggest you just come out with it. Tell him what we know from start to finish. From the way Sam went about creating the blood bond to Jacob's symptoms, then our questions and theories. Edward suggested you invite him to dinner afterward. This way he can have some time with Jacob. We'll take them out to a restaurant or they can stay here, asked Billy. Tell him, he and the pack are all welcome to surround the house if that makes him feel better, but Sam will not set foot within our boundaries. It's going to be a shock, but he deserves to know. That is his son upstairs. I'm sure he's going to want to be with his son to at least talk and say goodbye if that is what he chooses to do. I nodded. Thank you, Jasper. He smiled and sent me another wave of calm and confidence before he left the room. I stared at the phone in my lap for a few moments before I picked it up and dialed the Black residence. Hello, came a tired sound from a tired voice. Is Billy Black there? Speaking, who is this? It's Carlisle Cullen. I heard a muffled groan. What can I do for you? I paused and took a large breath. Jacob imprinted on Edward, I rushed out. Then held my breath and tensed. There was silence on the other end. Billy? Jacob is in our home now, in Forks. Please come, I have some questions regarding Jacob's health and the pregnancy and… He's pregnant. Billy yelled. Yes, Samuli did not tell you. He created a blood bond with Jacob. Edward found him in some bushes in England. Jacob was starving and exhausted. Edward helped him with food and rest. Then when Jacob had the energy to change again, he imprinted on Edward. Sam came almost attacking Jacob. Edward and my other son chased Sam off. They brought Jacob back here. They wanted to make sure that he was getting healthy again and that there were no complications with the pups. I need to know more about what to expect from the pregnancy to correctly check him out. He is dangerously thin still and not overly hungry. He's got a very bad case of morning sickness and I want to ask some other medical history to see if it's best to feed him intravenously. We invite you to dinner and you are welcome to bring the whole pack with you, but Sam only must stay off or land. Edward read what Sam did to Jacob. I hate to admit this, but it was basically rape. Sam ordered Jacob to have sex with him. I do not want Sam near Jacob. When he had flashbacks, he didn't even smell or acknowledge that Edward was behind him. Jacob's fear brought my other son to his knees. I will have Sam Ali destroyed if he comes within 100 feet of my home. Billy was silent for a moment. I was planning on speaking with you before dinner, then leaving you and Jacob alone in my home to eat while my family and I wander our land. If you wish, we can have Jacob take you out on my family, but know that 2 of my family members will be following on foot and will stay at a private distance. This is for me and my son's peace of mind. Jacob has been having some discomfort when he changes and his senses are diluted. He is about as capable of defending himself from a werewolf or vampire as a human. If something develops while you are out, my sons will be able to get to him and get you both back so I can care for him. Billy was still silent. I decided to wait for him to say something. It took about 2 minutes for his response. What time shall I arrive? Whenever is convenient for you. Edward has Jacob asleep upstairs. There is no rush. My other son will be able to keep him asleep until you are ready to eat. So please feel free to voice yourself. I'm sure you have some things that you wish to discuss with us. Please feel free to bring any rules you have for my family to my attention. I will be keeping Jacob here. I want him as far from Sam Ali as possible, but I do acknowledge the fact that he is still your underaged son. Should you wish to live here, we can set up a spare room for you on the main floor. That is your decision. Thank you. With that he hung up and I finally took a breath without fearing being the first vampire to have a panic attack. I want to be present for the conversation, Carlyle. Edward spoke from his room. Alright, Jasper, can you stay close? Of course, Carlyle. I want to be close for their dinner as well. Okay. Thank you, Jasper, Edward replied. Billy was dropped off by Sue 30 minutes later. Jasper got out his chair and helped him up the stairs. We congregated in the living room. Jacob had insisted that he be awake and present for the meeting. Edward ended up complying. As Billy entered the house, Edward stood in front of Jacob to protect him from any dangers that might arise. We all seated in our respective couples and Sue was seated behind Billy. Billy asked the first question. Jacob, son, can you please tell me what Sam did? Edward Pav. Jacob's heart started pounding and his color drained at his father's question. Edward. I can't tell him. It'll kill him. Two can't do that to him. You're the only one who knows exactly what he did. I don't want anyone to know. Please. I feel dirty and stupid and used already. I don't want the pity or hate or disgust that will come from others knowing. Please. Please. I nodded as Jasper's voice drifted to my head. I've never felt so many emotions, mostly negative. Hate, self-loathing, shame, disgust, betrayal, fear, panic. Jesus, Edward, calm him down. I can't influence him like this. There's too much coming at me, I can't get a lock on any one emotion. Billy, I spoke softly looking at Jake while I stroked across his forehead to his jaw. Jacob really doesn't want anyone to know. I turned to Billy now, exactly what happened. And I don't know all of it, but with what I do know, it's taking everything I am to keep from hunting Sam down and destroying him myself. It was rape. Jake flinched while I said this. I turned back to Jake and gently stroked his cheek again, trying to convey my feelings and support for him in a single touch. Jake asked him multiple times to stop. Sam told Jake that he was Jake's alpha, and that is his alpha. He was basically ordering Jake to let Sam do that. Jake's asked me not to tell you details, so I won't, but wait until they change. I'm sure that you can get it out of one of the others. Billy nodded and let his sorrowful gaze fall upon his son. What happened after you ran, Jake? How did you get to England? I just ran. I was only in Wolf when I was running. I snuck onto a ship. I didn't know where it was going, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I'm not even sure how long it took. I got off and stumbled around until I found a park. I slept and hunted there for what I guess was a few weeks. Then I wandered away from the city. I was so tired that I fell asleep between a couple of bushes. Next thing I knew, Edward was there. Jasper and I spun off into what happened from that point on. Billy seemed surprised that I would help Jacob. I could also tell that he was pissed at Sam. Billy, could you tell us everything you know about imprinting? Carlyle asked. Basically, the wolf spirit inside finds his mate. Most of the time the person doesn't need to be in their wolf form to imprint. Jacob, because you are pregnant there is a chance that you didn't actually imprint. Because Edward was taking care of you, helping you while you are pregnant, the wolf only imprinted because he was weak and Edward was being a strong mate. With you being the rightful alpha, your wolf is the oldest of our tribe. He has decided to take Edward as a mate, claim the strongest around. Edward was the first to protect you, which is why you imprinted. Technically it's not even imprinting. But I was helped 2 times before and I was a wolf around many people while I was in the park. I stayed wolf for 2 weeks. That's how Sam found me, I think. What do you mean you were helped while in wolf form? I was in the park hunting in the surrounding forest one afternoon. I was stalking a deer, but before I could get it, a hunter shot it. He heard me close and aimed at me. Another hunter that came upon us stopped him and I whimpered looking at the buck. It was the second day I was there in the park and it had taken most of my energy to change. I was failing by then. The hunter that stopped the man from shooting me let me take the buck and watched as I ate. I looked at him many times and I didn't imprint on him. They were around 21 and 26. Then. Maybe you did actually imprint on him. Billy, Jacob couldn't hear the others when he was changed after he imprinted on me. I'm not sure if it was because he imprinted or that he was so far away from home. I could hear the others just before I looked up at you, then I imprinted. That was when I lost the connection. I could hear everyone in my head while I was in the park. Why would the connection just stop? Jasper asked. Because Jake felt alienated from the pack and he has a new one growing inside of him. When he imprinted, he found his beta and his pups became his new pack. What if I still want to be friends with some of the others? It's Sam that I'm scared of. I want to be a part of the pack still. Jake, son, this is a situation that we have no complete information on. Understanding will come as the situation develops, so we'll have to figure this out as we go. I do not want you near Sam. I need to figure out what is going on with him and then make the decision with the rest if he should be banished from the tribe or allowed to stay. If you want to be a part of the pack again, I have 2 rules. First, you need to discuss it with your mate. Second, it will not happen until the pups are able to shift to human form. As long as your senses are back to normal and you are sure that is what you want, then I'm okay with it. I invite anyone you want over, but Sam. I'd be okay with you crossing the border, but Sam is there. He is unstable and we are unsure of what he will do. If what I know of blood bonds is true, it's like a brother, correct? I looked at Billy, who nodded. But this seems different. Something seems different about this relationship. I have a feeling it has to do with you being the rightful alpha of the pack. I think his impregnating you turned him almost into a lover of sorts, it made the relationship into the alpha and beta couple. But I could be wrong. All that was going through Sam's mind when he attacked was protect Jacob, get him home. That could mean anything, I agree, but this does seem different. A lot of times those impregnated against their will or on accident tend to leave the pack, but the way Sam is acting seems off. I will talk with him. Edward, I understand that being the imprintee, your feelings for Jake are just as strong as his, and with what Bella had told us of you, you're very protective of those you care for. If you wish to be present or question Sam on your own, you are welcome. Thank you, Mr. Black, but I'd be too tempted to destroy him. Until we know for sure what is going on, I do not wish to break the treaty in any way. Concerning the treaty, I wish for Jake to come and visit, but understanding your feelings, as long as you do not harm a human, then you are welcome upon our lands. All of the Cullens are. Please understand that this is going to be fraught by some of the pack, but they will be told not to attack. If they do, I give you permission, with no harm to come to you, to disable that member. Do not do permanent damage. Causing confusion is the best method to disable the member, and you may flee onto the land. Please call when you are coming, and do not come alone. My home will be neutral ground. No one may fight in any way in my home. Carlyle, is it alright if my pack has freedom to come and see Jake at your home? If it is alright with Jacob, then I have no problems with the other members of the pack or from the tribe coming to my home at any time. I'm not sure right now. I'm not sure if I want them to see me pregnant, especially when Sam replays it in his mind a lot. I don't know if I can face them now. I pulled my scared and hurt mate into my arms and Jasper spoke again. Jake, this wasn't your fault. Don't feel shame for any of it. If you wish, I'll be there to help. Or kick them out. Jake smiled up at Jasper, thank you. You're a member of the family, you're my brother already, Jasper smiled and ruffled Jake's hair. Billy, I'm willing to stand there beside you and use my gift to help when needed. I wish to be present for your talk with Sam. I'll be able to feel his emotions and feel if he is lying. Thank you. Jasper, he finished off for Billy and stood to shake his hand. Billy hesitated, not entirely trusting of the family, but he was willing to make an effort. After everything that had been shared with him, he believed Jacob had actually imprinted on me, but until Jacob and I were intimate, until we tried to complete the bond, we would not know for sure. Edward, if you are listening, just wait until Jake is ready. He's going to have a hard time allowing you to be intimate with him, but I know what you'll be feeling, and it will be hard on you both. You'll feel as if you're being rejected and that you're unwanted. But it isn't true. With what Sam did to him, he's going to be skittish of being intimate and it's going to make you feel that way. Take it slow and remember what you really feel now and my words. Feel free to come to me for reassurance if you need. You're always welcome in my family. I expect you to take care of him and if you don't, I'll let the pack loose on you. Please love my boy better than you loved Bella. Love him like your father loves your mother. Like I somehow know you can love him. Promise me. I promise to heed your advice. I promise and I deeply thank you. Come to me later with Jasper. I wish to talk more about the imprinting. Jasper seems to care about Jacob and I don't want any of your family alone on my land. I agree. Jasper and I will meet with you later. Why am I meeting him with you? Jasper asked. He wants to discuss the imprinting more. You're the only other one he believes really cares about Jake. That is the only reason that he trusts us to be alone with him and he doesn't want any one of us to be alone on his land, I said at vampire speed and in a tone that only my family could hear. Esme has cooked some spaghetti and Alice made a Caesar salad. Dinner is ready for you in the kitchen. Do you wish us to leave for your privacy or are you comfortable having everyone in the house? The wolves are welcome to eat as well, Carlisle told Billy. I want Jacob to have some time with his father alone. If the others want to eat, then they can but away from Jacob and his father, I spoke. Billy looked at me and a smile almost graced his lips. Is there a private area where Jacob and I can eat? Edward, you're welcome to join us. I very much appreciated the gesture and I shook my head in response. No, you two need some father-son time. I offer you my room. Jasper or I can get you up the stairs and any of us are just a call away for anything that you need. Thank you. I smiled and he told me it was alright if I helped him up the stairs. If Billy was going to be a large part of our home, I'd need to suggest to Carlisle a chairlift or elevator. For Billy's independence, respect and comfort. Once I had Billy up into my room, I quickly cleaned off the table I had in the corner and placed it in the middle of the room. I pulled the couch over to the table. With a quick kiss to Jake's cheek, I left them just as Esme and Alice brought up the meal they had prepared. Jacob Pav. We ate in silence for a while, just like we used to. My father and I never needed to fill the silence with hollow banter. We shared a mutual contentment with comfortable silence. After we finished my dad reached out to take my hand. Jake, cub, I'm so sorry, he choked out. I said a blood bond, not impregnation. I'm sorry, I feel like this is my fault. SHHH, Dad, I know this isn't what you meant. Sam would still have done it anyway if that is what he wanted. Just know that I don't blame you and that I still love you. I implored. He smiled through his tears and wheeled himself over to me. I hugged him close and my dam broke. I'm so scared, Daddy, I sobbed into his chest. I know, cub, we all are. But you're going to be a wonderful mommy and Edward's going to be a great dad. He'll take care of you and your cubs, I know he will, he soothed. He hugged me close for a little while until a soft knock came from the door. Sitting up and whipping my tears, I mumbled to come in. Esme opened the door, would you like to watch a movie? The pack is outside wrestling with Emmett and Jasper. The girls are out cheering on the boys. I smiled at her and then looked to my dad. He nodded and Edward suddenly flitted into the room. Of course, Billy, he said. He picked up my dad and started down the hall. I talked to Carlisle, we're going to get you chairlifts for the stairs, this way you have the freedom you want in our home. Edward told Billy as he helped him down the stairs. Thank you, but it is not necessary. I know it's not, but it is out of respect for you. You're an independent man, we'd like to keep you that way, Edward smiled. Edward helped him to get onto the couch and sat on the opposite end of the couch while I watched three wolves try to pin Emmett to the ground. Edward, what's going through Emmett's mind right now? He's trying not to laugh. He knows that they aren't putting everything into it and he's having a way too easy go of evading them. I snorted and then turned to sit down after Edward popped a movie in. I sat in the middle and laid back. My feet found my dad's lap while my head sunk into Edward's. He played with my hair, massaging my scalp while the movie played. My dad just held onto my feet like he used to when I was a child. Edward Pav. Jake fell asleep 20 minutes into the movie, so Billy sat with me and watched the movie. He was enjoying the old western while I was just about purring from cuddling with Jake. After the movie finished, Billy turned to look at Jake. He must be tired. I nodded. Jake whimpered but then snuggled into my lap a little more. I'm more than thankful that he doesn't have nightmares. What Sam did hurt him, more than I can imagine. Billy nodded. Esme came in and smiled at us. She came over and sat down beside me, trailing a hand down the side of Jake's face. He's so scared. I can see it from where I am. I remember how I felt when I found out I was having a baby, mused. He is afraid. He's afraid of Sam trying something. He's afraid of being a bad mom, of losing the pups. He loves these little things already. I smiled down at him. How many are there? Do you know? 8, and I replied. 8? Billy asked us, a little dazed. I nodded. 8 tiny heartbeats and 1 big one. That's a lot of pups. He's going to need help. Bros walked in then, we're all here to help them, and I'm excited to be an auntie. The rest filed in, including the pack, and all me too'd. Billy smiled and looked up at Jasper. Can you help me back to my chair? It's time to be getting back. The boys have shifts to run. Jasper walked over to him, moved Jake's feet gently, and scooped Billy up and deposited him in his chair across the room. He looked a little green from the experience, and Jasper mumbled an apology. Jake woke as Billy started to wheel himself out the door. If you hurry you can catch your dad to say bye. He smiled at me and rushed off. I slumped back on the couch, Jasper sat beside me, and Carlisle rubbed my neck standing behind the couch. I'm worried about him too, we all are, but don't stress too much, Edward. He'll pick up on it and stress too, Jasper said. I sighed and leaned my head back to rest on Carlisle's stomach. He really is my dad and they really are my older siblings. I smiled to myself as I heard Jake yell, finishing his goodbyes. Ended. Guys, thanks for watching. As you want more then you need to just subscribe me. Have a good day.